Welcome everybody to today's edition of Mexico News Network's Breaking News Business. I'm your host, Elliot Bullman. Remember to follow us on all our social networks and to catch us every day by logging onto our website, mexiconewsnetwork.com, for relevant stories and news. Let's start with today's show. The commerce sector of Mexico City estimates that the 6th edition of El Buen Fin, which takes place from the 18th to the 21st of November, will generate economic revenues in excess of 22.5 billion pesos, 5% higher than that of 2015. In a press conference, the president of the local Chamber of Commerce, Services and Tourism, Canaco, Humberto Lozano Aviles, and the head of the Economic Development Secretariat, SEDECO, Salomon Waldenberg, agreed that programs like this are the best way to strengthen Mexico's domestic commerce. They emphasized that in the face of the current international situation, particularly the uncertainty generated by the outcome of the US elections, it's time for unity and to take internal actions that allow the development of the national economy. Lozano Aviles pointed out that Mexico City's participation alone in El Buen Fin will account for around 25% of the country's total transactions, which equates to between 85 and 90 billion pesos. He detailed the expected sales percentages are in apparel and footwear with 32.7%, electronic products 29.5%, appliances 7.4%, and others such as tourist packages, furniture, auto accessories totaling 30.4%. The leader of the Mexico City Chamber of Commerce called on chamber members to offer really good discounts on their goods and services, noting that discounts of between 10 and 40% are expected. He also called on consumers to preferentially buy goods and services produced in Mexico, which will give an important boost to the national economy and protect jobs. Moving on. On his way to the White House, President-elect Donald Trump vowed to deport all of the United States' estimated 11.3 million undocumented immigrants within 2 years of becoming US president. Trump will soon have to present the cost and the negative impact to the US economy of such a mass removal plan to Congress when he takes office in January 2017. So for this to actually happen within the specified time frame, between 458,000 and 611,000 deportations per month would be required. In all of 2013, the Obama administration deported a record of 438,000 immigrants in 1 year. So in other words, Trump wants to deport in 1 month alone a higher number than Obama administration deported in 12 months. A 2015 study by the American Action Forum, a conservative pro-immigration group, estimates the federal government would have to spend roughly $400 to $600 billion to deport 11.3 million people and prevent future unlawful entry into the US over a 20-year time period. Mass deportation will burden the economy, the report states. Removing all undocumented immigrants would cause the labor force to shrink by 6.4%. As a result, 20 years from now, the economy would be nearly 6% or $1.6 trillion smaller than it would be if the immigrants were allowed to stay. Trump, of course, has rejected the money estimates. Well, first of all, they're wrong, he said, speaking on ABC's This Week program, referring to the American Action Forum's estimates. On the flip side, putting unauthorized immigrants on a pathway to citizenship, which 2/3 of Americans actually support, would add a cumulative $1.2 trillion to the United States GDP over a decade, increase the earnings of all Americans by $625 billion, and create an average of 145,000 new jobs every year. In other headlines, Mexico's peso rallied for a second consecutive day this Tuesday, November the 15th, rebounding from last week's historic slump caused by concerns that US President-elect Donald Trump could crimp cross-border trade. The peso strengthened more than 2% to 20.25 per dollar, its best day in 9 months. Following Trump's election, the currency hit a record low in its worst 2-day slump since the 1995 devaluation. The peso gained about 0.8% on Monday after Trump softened some of his campaign rhetoric that had been directed at Mexico. The peso rose largely thanks to the 5% rise in the price of Brent crude oil, following OPEC's feel-good announcement on Tuesday that members will make a concerted effort to reduce oil production and stabilize pricing. The peso was also helped by the Mexican government's rise in domestic interest rates, but also the publication of an opinion piece in the Financial Times by Donald Trump's economic advisor, Anthony Scaramucci, suggesting the president-elect is open to negotiations before imposing import barriers relieved pressure on the peso. Mr. Trump believes in free but fair trade, Scaramucci wrote. Tariffs are unnecessary if agreements like the World Trade Organization and NAFTA are adequately enforced. Comments from the Trump camp suggesting tariffs are not a policy yet set in stone had the effect of lessening some of the downward pressure on the peso, agreed Rhetoric, the global head of foreign exchange at National Australia Bank Limited in Sydney. But those comments and talk of fences instead of walls are far too fuzzy at this stage to prompt a sea change in sentiment towards the peso. And finally, let's take a look at the markets. The Mexican peso increased 0.23% to 20.25 from 20.208 in the previous trading session. The peso changed down 1.5% during the last week, up 8.86% during the last month, and was up 21.08% during the past year. Mexico's IPC decreased 0.48% to 44,808 from 45,024 in the previous trading session. The IPC Mexico changed down 5.45% during the last week, down 5.98% during the last month, and was up 1.41% during the last year. This was all for today. Thank you for staying with us. I'm your host, Elliot Bullman. Remember to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. Log on to MexicoNewsNetwork.com for more information on Mexico and the world. Until next time.